Lesson 11, the third declension, nouns in LOR, imperfect indicative of sum, the dative of the possessor. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lenny's Latin class. Today we're on page 35 in lesson 11. And the big thing that we're going to be talking about today is the third declension. Okay, in Latin we have 5 different patterns of endings for nouns. The first declension, second declension, third declension, fourth declension, and fifth declension. You already know the first and second declensions. The first one is mainly feminine. Nouns typically end with A in the first declension. In the second declension, you have nouns that end with US or UM, and they can be masculine or neuter. And we also have examined a smaller class of nouns within the second declension, which end with IR or ER, like wir and ager. So you know the first 2 out of the 5 declensions. Today we're going to learn the third declension, which is kind of a catch-all. Okay? The third declension can have nouns of any gender, masculine, feminine, and neuter. And one major thing to know about the third declension is that oftentimes you will have a stem change between the nominative singular and the genitive singular. Remember the verb ager that we discussed recently? In the nominative, it's ager. In the genitive singular, though, it becomes agri, A-G-R-I. So the base or the stem is different from the nominative singular to the genitive singular. So the big thing to remember with the second declension noun ager is that you make all the different forms of ager from the genitive stem. Okay, you take the genitive singular form, which is agri, A-G-R-I, and you get rid of the I, chop off the I, and that leaves you with AGR. And AGR is the genitive stem. That is the stem that you add all the different endings to make the different forms of ager, except for the nominative singular, of course. Every form except the nominative singular is made from the base AGR. So here is the big idea to remember. For the noun ager, you make the different forms from the genitive stem, not from the nominative. Okay, that's a super important thing to remember. And why am I bringing this up now? Because we're going to see this concept more and more as we go into the third declension. Okay? In the third declension, you're going to form all the different forms of the noun from the genitive stem. Okay, and we'll review that again later. For now, let's turn the page to page 36, and let's start to dive into the third declension and start to look at some of the specifics of it. Let's read section 109 together. In section 109, they tell us that there is some variation here. The nominative singular may have the same base as the genitive, or it might be different from the genitive. Okay, we're going to see both of those in the third declension. Let's take a look at section 110, which has model nouns. On the far left, we have the noun consul. In ancient Rome, a consul was one of 2 elected officials, like presidents, but instead of one president, they had 2 of them who held office simultaneously. So they had 2 consuls each year. So this is a masculine noun of the third declension. In the nominative singular, you get consul. For the genitive singular, you simply add is. Okay, so consulis is the genitive singular. There is no difference here between the genitive stem and the stem you see here in the nominative singular. Okay, so for some third declension nouns, there will not be a stem change. For others, there will be. For instance, move 1 column to the right and you see the noun legio, which means legion. The nominative singular form is legio, but observe the genitive singular form. That's legionis. Notice that the letter N is there now. Okay, so remember how to find the genitive stem? You get the genitive singular form and you chop off the ending. Here the ending is is. So if you take legionis and chop off the ending, you're left with legion, just like our English word legion. And that's how we're going to form all the other forms of this noun. The dative singular, accusative singular, ablative singular, they all have the N there before the personal ending. But the nominative singular does not. So this is an example of a noun which is different from the nominative singular to the genitive singular. The noun consul is not different, but for legio, it is different. We get the letter N in the genitive stem. Moving one more column to the right, we see another noun which does not have a stem change. Mercator, that means a trader or a merchant. You can see that etymologically it's related to our English word merchant. Mercator, and then in the genitive singular, mercatoris. You simply add is and you get the genitive singular form. There is no stem change here. But moving on to the next column to the right, we get pater, which means father. And we do have a stem change. Notice that the nominative singular form is pater, but the E goes away in the genitive singular. You get patris. The E goes away. And the only form where that E is there is the nominative singular. So that's a stem change. So patris is the genitive singular. You take away the is ending, and you get patr. Now you have the genitive stem, patr, and now you can add all the other endings and get the other forms of pater. Okay, so quick review. In the third declension, there are some nouns where the stem is the same from nominative to genitive, but there are other nouns that have a stem change. And it's very important that you look at the genitive stem to get the different forms of the noun. Okay, so what are the endings of the third declension? If you look in the very right-hand column here, you'll see the endings. In the genitive singular, you have is. For dative singular, you have a long I. Accusative singular, em is the ending. For the ablative singular, you get the letter E. It's a short E, by the way. Nominative plural, you get es. Genitive plural, you get um. Sometimes you get an I before the um, and it's ium. We'll talk about that later. For the dative plural and ablative plural, you get ibus. And for the accusative plural, you get es. Take some time to familiarize yourself with the endings of the third declension, and as you do, be encouraged by the fact that the vast majority of Latin nouns are from either the first, second, or third declension. The fourth and fifth declensions don't really have that many words. So if you know the first three declensions, that's the vast majority of it. In order to help you get these endings, let's practice a bit with the noun pater, which means father. If I say the father is in the house, there the word father is the subject of the sentence, so that would be pater in Latin. If I say the money of the father, or the father's money is in the house, that's a possessive. So that would need to be genitive singular in Latin. That would be patris. The money of the father, pecunia patris. Okay? Patri would be dative singular. If I say I'm telling a story to the father, then it would be I'm telling a story patri, to the father. If I say I see the father, then in that sentence the word father is the direct object. So in Latin that would be patrem I see the patrem. If I say action is being performed passively and I want to use pater as an ablative of agent, I could say a patre, by the Father. The action is being performed a patre, by the Father. In the plural, I could say the fathers are all having a conversation. That would be patres. If I want to make it possessive, the children of the fathers are all playing baseball. Of the fathers would be possessive, being possessed by more than one father. So in Latin, that would be genitive plural. That would be patrum. Okay? The children patrum of the fathers are playing baseball. If I say I'm telling a story to the fathers, that would be patribus. Dative plural. If I say I see the fathers, in that sentence, fathers would be the direct object. In Latin, patres. I see the patres. If I wanted to make an ablative of agent, if I said the action is being performed by the fathers, I could say a patribus, by the fathers. Okay, so take some time and get accustomed to these third declension noun endings, and we'll be getting lots of practice with them in upcoming lessons in our translation exercises. Let's move on now to section 111. In the last lesson, we learned how to say sum, es, est, sumus, estis, sunt. Those are the present tense verbs of being. Sum means I am. Es means you are. Est, est, means he, she, or it is. Sumus means we are. Estis means y'all are. That's a second person plural. And sunt means they are. Okay, so we know the present tense forms. Now in section 111, we're going to learn verbs of being in a past tense. Okay, this particular past tense here is called the imperfect tense. As we go forward, we will learn more about the imperfect tense and its specific meaning. For now, let's just learn the forms. Eram means I was. Eras means you were. Erat, he, she, or it was. Eramus, we were. Eratus means y'all were. That's a second person plural. Erant means they were. If you look at the endings, you'll notice the familiar OST, MUS, TIS, NT, except in the first person singular. In the first person singular, you'll notice that eram has the letter M, where in the present tense you would expect the letter O. So let's chant these forms together for memorization. Eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant. Okay, if you chant those over and over, you can memorize them. And in the present tense, you can say sum, es, est, sumus, estis, sunt. Okay, let's move on now to section 112, and let's examine our vocabulary for this lesson. Concilium, concilii, is a neuter noun of the second declension, and it means plan. Next we have consul, consulis. That's a masculine noun of the third declension, which means consul, one of the two top elected officials of Rome. They would each serve a 1-year term. Next we have Caesar, Caesaris. That's a person's name, Julius Caesar, and that is a masculine noun of the third declension. Okay, Caesar is nominative singular. Caesaris is genitive singular. Another name, Piso, Pisonus. Notice in the genitive singular you have the is ending. That's also a third declension noun. Next, an important third declension noun, Homo, hominis, which means man in the sense of mankind. Notice that in this noun, the stem is different from nominative to genitive. Let's find the genitive stem by taking the genitive singular form, hominis, and removing the IS ending. So we get HOMIN, and to that genitive stem, we'll add all the different third declension endings. We'll get forms like hominem, homini, hominum, hominibus. So the stem here is HOMIN. Only the nominative singular has the HOMO spelling. Next we have legio, legionis. That's a feminine noun of the third declension, which means legion. Notice the stem change in the genitive singular. You get the letter N there. At the top of the right-hand column, we have mercator, mercatoris, a masculine noun of the third declension, which means trader or merchant. That one does not have a stem change. Next we have multitudo, multitudinous, which means great number. That's a feminine noun of the third declension, and you can see that our English word multitude is related to that. Next we have pater, patris, a masculine noun of the third declension, which we discussed earlier. Notice the stem change. You get patr in the genitive singular. Next we have septentriones, septentrionum, that's third declension, and the forms they're giving us here are plural. So septentriones is nominative plural, septentrionum is genitive plural. And it means north in a reference to a constellation. The first part of this word, septen, that's the Latin word for seven, really septem with the letter M, but the M changes to an N. And trio, triones, that means a plow ox. So literally the etymology of septentriones says the seven plow oxen. Again, this is an ancient name for a constellation which includes the North Star. It includes the star known as Polaris. In the United States, this same cluster of stars is known as the Big Dipper. In the United Kingdom, they call it, I believe, the Wain or Charles's Wain. And apparently, as far as I can tell, I'm not an expert on stars, but apparently it's also part of a larger constellation called Ursa Major. That is the Big Bear. Ursa is a Latin word that means bear. So septentriones means the north because it's a constellation that includes the North Star, like the Big Dipper. Literally, it's the seven plow oxen. So when we're reading Julius Caesar and it says ad septentriones, that means to the north. Okay, moving on to saipe. That's an adverb that means often. Finally, we have two verbs, komeo, komeare, komeawi, komeatum, which means to go back and forth. And then we have wergo, wergere. That's a third conjugation verb that means to incline, slope, or lie. So soon we're going to see sentences that say something inclines to the north. Vergit ad septentriones. Okay, so if you see a sentence that says Gallia vergit ad septentriones, that means Gaul inclines toward the north in the sense that it's in the direction of the north, or that it lies to the north in the sense that you'd have to go north to get there. Okay, let's move on to section 113. Let's not write these out. Instead, let's just do them together verbally. Number one says legione consulis. Okay, legione is a form of the third declension feminine noun legio, which means legion. Here it's ablative singular. And consulis is genitive singular. That means of the consul. So if we translated legione as ablative of means, it could say something like by the legion of the consul, or by the consul's legion. Number two, patres mercatorum. Okay, patres means fathers, that's nominative plural. or it could be accusative plural. And mercatorum is genitive plural of the word mercator, which means merchant. So number 2 will say the fathers of the merchants. Number 3, multitudinem hominem. Multitudinem means a great number. Notice the ending is em, which in the third declension is accusative singular. And hominem is genitive plural. Remember that this word is homo hominis. Take away the is from hominis, and you get homin. That's the genitive stem. Add and you get hominum, which is genitive plural. So number 3 says, a great multitude of men. In number 4, we have a prepositional phrase, cum caesare et legionibus. Cum means with. That's a preposition that requires the ablative case. And caesare is ablative singular. Notice the letter E ending there. So cum caesare says with Caesar. Et means and legionibus is ablative plural. Notice the ibus ending there. So cum caesare et legionibus says with Caesar and the legions. Number 5, ad septentriones. Okay, this means to the north. Ad means to or toward, and septentriones, as I mentioned a few moments ago, literally means the 7 plow oxen. That's an ancient name for a constellation, what today we would call the Big Dipper, and that's in the northern sky. It includes the North Star. So to the ancient Romans, that's how you would say to the north, ad septentriones. Okay, let's move on now to section 114. And in this section, we are going to learn a new thing called the dative of possession. Okay, we're going to use the dative case to say that we have something. Okay, let's compare these 2 model sentences. And in each of these model sentences, we're going to learn a way to say that we have something. So there are 2 ways to say that we have something. The first way will be shown to us by model sentence 1. The second way, which is the dative of possession, will be in model sentence 2. So let's examine model sentence number 1. Consul multas legiones habet. Okay, the subject of the sentence here is consul. That's one of the 2 elected executive officers of ancient Rome. They would each serve a 1-year term, and you'd have 2 of them serving at the same time. The verb here is habet. That's a form of the verb habeo, which means to have. So consul and habet together will say the consul has, and then multas legiones is many legions. Okay, legiones is a form of the noun legio, which is a feminine noun of the third declension. It's being modified by multas, and they are both accusative plural. So number 1 says, the consul has many legions. Okay, this is the first way to say that you have something. That is using the verb habeo. You can say that you have something using the verb habeo. Okay, pretty simple, right? Now we're going to learn a second way to say that you have something. And this is called the dative of possession. Let's examine model sentence number 2. Consuli multae legiones sunt. Okay, remember that the dative case shows the party in the sentence that is benefiting or receiving. Okay, so consuli is dative singular, third declension, that is. So we could translate consuli as to the consul or for the consul. And then the subject of the sentence is legiones. That is nominative plural. So it means legions, and then the verb is sunt. So legiones and sunt together say legions are, and we have multi here modifying legiones, so it's many legions. So a literal rendering of model sentence 2 would say this: to the consul, many legions are. Okay, that's a roundabout way of saying that the consul has many legions. But instead of using the verb habeo, you use a verb of being and then the dative case. So the multilegiones, the many legions, sunt, are to the consul. Many legions are to the consul. That's an ancient Roman way of saying that the consul has many legions. Okay, back to model sentence 1 momentarily. Notice that the verb habet here is acting upon the multas legiones, so they are accusative. In model sentence 2, multi and legiones are nominative. They are the subject of the sentence. So in number 1, the consul is the subject, habet is the verb, and multas legiones is the direct object. The consul has the legions. In number 2, multilegiones is the subject. Sunt is the verb. It's a verb of being, not an action verb. And then consuli is dative. But here's the important thing. Both sentences are saying the same thing. Number 1 says that the consul has many legions, and number 2 says that the consul has many legions, just in a different way. So whether you say the consul has many legions or there are to the consul many legions, either way, it means the same thing. And when you use the dative case and a verb of being, that's called the dative of possession. And it's very common in Latin, so if you keep going, you'll see it over and over. Okay, let's move on now to section 115. Let's turn the page to page 38. And we have a rule here to know. And the rule here says the dative of the possessor is used with the verb sum. Okay, we saw that in our model sentences. In this book, they call it the dative of the possessor. I call it the dative of possession. So in model sentence 2, we saw that they used a form of the verb sum, that is a verb of being, plus the dative case to show possession. Okay, let's move on now to our translation. That's section 116. So turn off the recording, translate these exercises on your own for practice, and when you're done, turn the recording back on, and we'll go over them together. Okay, hopefully by now you've finished your homework. Let's dive into section 116, starting with number 1. Marcus Messala et Marcus Piso erant consules. Okay, this is telling us that 2 people were consuls in ancient Rome. Marcus Messala is someone's name, and Marcus Piso is also someone's name. The verb here is erant. That's a past tense form of sum, the verb of being, that we learned earlier in this lesson. Those forms again: eram, eras, erat, eramos, eratus, erant. And that's what this is. It's the third person plural form. So we can translate erant as they were. Consules is a predicate nominative. Remember that a predicate is what you get after a verb of being. When you say thing A is thing B, then in that kind of structure, thing B is not a direct object, it's a predicate, because the verb is a verb of being, not an action verb. So that's what we have here. We're saying these 2 guys were consuls, therefore consules is in the nominative case, and that's our predicate. So number 1 says, Marcus Messala and Marcus Piso were consuls. Number 2 is next. Pater Castici erat amicus populi Romani. Okay, our subject here is pater. That means father. That's one of our new third declension nouns for this lesson. And castici is nominative singular. It's possessing the word pater. That's a person's name, Causticus. That's a masculine noun of the second declension. So castici is genitive singular from the second declension. So pater kostiki says the father of Kostikos. Our verb here is erat. Again, that's one of our new past tense forms of the verb of being, and it means he, she, or it was. So far, we have the father of Kostikos was. Amicus is next. That means friend. And now we have more genitive singulars. Populi Romani means of the Roman people. Populus is a second declension noun. And Romani is an adjective modifying it. So number 2 altogether says, the father of Kostikos was a friend of the Roman people. Number 3 is next. Ad belgas mercatores non saepe comeant. Okay, the subject here is mercatores. That means merchants. And the verb here is comeant. That's a form of the verb comeo, which means to travel back and forth. So comeant is third person plural. So it means they travel back and forth. So our subject and verb say merchants travel back and forth. Mercatores comeant. Ad belgas is a prepositional phrase, to the Belgians. Saepe is an adverb that means often. And our verb here, comeant, is being negated by the word non, which means not. So altogether, number 3 says, merchants do not travel back and forth often to the Belgians. Number 4 is next. Gallia vergit ad septentriones. Okay, ad septentriones means to the north. We studied that quite a bit already in this lesson. Gallia is the subject. That means Gaul. And vergit is the verb. If you turn back to the vocabulary on page 37, you'll see vergo, vergere. That's what this verb is. And it means incline, slope, or lie. So this sentence is telling us that Gaul is to the north. Of course, if you're an ancient Roman and you're in Rome, from your perspective, Gaul would be to the north. So we can translate vergit as lies. We can say Gaul lies to the north. Number 5 is next. Multitudo hominum erat in Helvetia. Okay, lots of third declension nouns here. Multitudo means a great number. That's one of our new third declension nouns for this lesson, and that's a nominative singular. Hominum is genitive plural. That's a form of the noun homo, which means man. So hominum, being genitive plural, means of men or of the men. So multitudo hominum says a great number of men, and erat means he, she, or it was. In Helvetia is a prepositional phrase. In is taking the ablative, so it simply means in Helvetia. So number 5 will say, a great number of men was in Helvetia. Number 6 is next. Una legio erat in Gallia. As I mentioned before, the numbers 1 through 3 are declinable. They can have different declined endings, but once you get to the number 4, which is quatuor, they become indeclinable. The word legio, which means legion, is from the third declension, and it's feminine. So when it's being modified by the number 1, we get a feminine ending for it, and that's una. So una legio means 1 legion. Notice the feminine ending there for una. Erat means was, and in Gallia means in Gaul. So number 6 says, 1 legion was in Gaul. And the footnote tells you a little bit more about a legion. Basically, it was a large division of Roman troops. Moving on to number 7. Caesar in Galliam contendit, et ad genavam pervenit. Okay, the subject here is Caesar. That means Julius Caesar. And the verb here is contendit. That's a form of the verb contendo, which means strive, fight, or hasten. here it means hasten, and it's third person singular. So Caesar and contendit says Caesar is hastening. Then we have the prepositional phrase in galliam. Notice that the preposition in is taking the accusative case. So we can translate it as into. So the first part of this sentence says, Caesar is hastening into Gaul. Now we have the conjunction et, which means and now we have a new clause after that with a new verb. So pervenit is the verb. That's a verb you already know, venio, but with a prepositional prefix attached to the front, per. So per plus venio together, it means to come through in the sense of arrive. So let's just translate pervenio as arrive. Since pervenit is third person singular, we'll say he, she, or it is arriving. And then we have ad Genawam. That's the city which is today known as Geneva. It's a city in Switzerland. Back in Julius Caesar's day, that area was called Helvetia. So we could translate ad Genawam as to Genawa or to Geneva. The preposition ad can also mean other things besides to or toward. It can mean at. It can mean near. So let's translate it here as at, and let's say Caesar is hastening into Gaul and is arriving at Geneva. Number 8 is next. Una legione Caesar longum murum et fossam perducit. The subject here is Caesar, and the verb here is perducit. Perducit is the verb duco, which means to lead, again with the same prepositional prefix as we saw with pervenit, and that is the preposition per, which means through. So per and ducit together, literally to lead through. So for now, let's translate Caesar perducit as Caesar is leading through. We have two direct objects here, murum and then fossam. They are both accusative singular. Murum is the accusative singular form of murus, which means wall, and fossam is the accusative singular form of fossa, a first declension noun, which means ditch. So those are the direct objects of the verb perducit. So what we have so far, Caesar is leading through a wall and a ditch. Murum is being modified by longum, so it's a long wall. And we have una legione here. Notice that it's ablative singular. Legione has the letter E at the end. That tells us that it's the ablative singular form of this third declension noun, legio. And una, which means one, is a first and second declension adjective. So una legione is ablative of means, and that's telling us the instrument or the tool with which Caesar was doing the action of the verb perducit. So what we have so far is Caesar is leading through a long wall and a ditch with one legion, or by one legion. But with this translation of lead through, it doesn't make much sense. It's not a good way to translate perducit. So let's read the footnote here, footnote number 4. It says here, perducit equals per plus ducit, leads through, and here's the important part. It says, with fossam and murum, it may be translated constructs. So you might ask yourself the question, how does perduco mean to build something? And the idea here is that the wall and the ditch are things that can be lengthened. If you have a wall and you build more of the wall, you're making the wall longer. You're extending the wall. If you have a ditch and you make the ditch longer, you're extending the ditch. You're making it extend longer. And that's basically what the verb perducit means here. It means to lead something out, to lead it out longer So if you extend or lead out a wall or extend or lead out a ditch, you're building or constructing the wall or the ditch. So that's the idea here. So perducit here means to construct a wall or construct a ditch in the sense of extending them or leading them out. So for number 8, we can say, with one legion, Caesar is constructing a long wall and a ditch. In number 9, we see a dative of possession. Let's read it together. Consilium erat helvetiis. The subject here is consilium. That means plan. Erat is the verb. That's a past tense form of the verb of being. It means he, she, or it was. And then helvetiis is dative plural. So you can see how the dative of possession is working out here. Literally, it's saying a plan was to the helvetii. Okay, consilium is the subject, erat is the verb, helvetiis is the dative, that's the dative of possession. So number 9 will say, literally, a plan was to the helvetii, but a much smoother translation, which reflects better English, would be the helvetii had a plan. Number 10 is next. Yet another dative of possession. The verb here is sunt. That means they are. The subject here is equi. That's a form of the second declension masculine noun equus, which means horse. Equi here is nominative plural, so it means horses. And it's being modified by multi, which means many. So multi-equi says many horses. And along with sunt, it says many horses are. Now we have the dative in the dative of possession, meo fratri. Here we are mixing a first and second declension adjective, that's meus, mea, meum, with a third declension noun. So meo has a second declension ending, fratri has a third declension ending. But that's okay. It doesn't matter that they're from two different declensions. What matters is that they match in case, number, and gender. So both meo and fratri are masculine, dative, and singular. So meo fratri says, to my brother. So literally, number 10 says, to my brother, there are many horses. But a much smoother translation that involves much better English would be, my brother has many horses. Number 11 is next. Mercatoribus erant Romana arma. Here we have yet another dative of possession. The subject here is arma, which means arms, as in weapons. It's being modified by Romana, so that means Roman arms. By the way, arma is neuter, so this is a nominative plural form here, arma. And the verb is erant. That's a past tense form of the verb of being. It means they were. So Roman arms were, and then mercatoribus, that's dative plural, third declension, to the merchants. Okay, again, this is dative of possession. There were Roman arms to the merchants. That's the literal translation, but a much better translation would involve the word have in English, have or has. In this case, it's past tense, so we would say the merchants had Roman arms. But literally, with the dative of possession, it says there were Roman arms to the merchants. Okay, one last thing before we wrap up here, and that's speaking the language. In this particular lesson, what I would recommend for you as far as practicing your spoken Latin is to practice with the different endings of third declension nouns. You could start with the nominative and accusative forms. For instance, if you want to use the word pater, you could say something like pater est in Gallia, the father is in Gaul. That lets you practice with the nominative form. Then you could make pater the direct object, change it to patrem, and say video patrem, I see the father. Same thing for homo. You could say homo est in Gallia, the man is in Gaul. Then you could say video hominem, I see the man. So if you take a few third declension nouns like that and start to make up sentences like that in your head, you can start to practice with the nominative and with the accusative. Then you could move to the nominative plural and say consules sunt in Gallia, the consuls are in Gaul. You could put est or sunt at the very beginning of a sentence and say things like there is or there are. When you put est at the beginning of a sentence, it has a sense of there is. So you could say est mercator in Gallia, there is a merchant in Gaul. Or you could say sunt mercatores in Gallia, there are merchants in Gaul. You could put an adjective with it and say sunt multi mercatores in Gallia, there are many merchants in Gaul. You could practice with the dative of possession. You could say mercatoribus sunt arma, there are arms to the merchants. The merchants have arms in the sense of weapons. You could say the fathers have sons. Patribus sunt filii, literally, sons are to the fathers. And also, don't forget to practice with the imperfect forms of the verb of being from section 111, eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant. Okay? Practice with those. Make up sentences. Imagine the action occurring in your mind. See the movie footage in your mind as you say the words. Forget about the English language. Just think Latin, 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 and put the Latin words with the pictures in your mind and just speak Latin and feel the meanings and feelings of the words you say as you say them. And that will help you progress very quickly in the language. Okay, practice hard, and we will see you in the next lesson.